We're going to get super high-end graphic production today with Joe Zamora from NewBlueFX. I mentioned that everyone who's attended and registered this event is going to get a free 6-month license for NewBlueFX Titler Present. So I'm going to turn it over to Joe. How are you doing today, Joe?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Paul. I'm very excited to be here today.
We are super excited to have you. We're really having a lot of fun with NewBlueFX, and I said, everybody's looking to step up their production, and there's a lot of reasons why, right? Whether there's a lot of competition on live video productions these days, and you want to stand out, whether you just simply want to be able to deliver data during the presentation. I cannot wait to see your presentation, and I'll let you take it away, Joe.
Yeah, sure, no problem. Now, just to kind of, give some background about NewBlue, we started off as a post-production company. So if you've seen us in the past and you've installed our plugin through whether it be Edius, Resolve, or Premiere, you would have noticed that we run as a titling engine, as a plugin titling engine that you can use as overlays for your post-production projects. So the main focus was to add a professional polish in the post-production environment, because you have so much control in that environment, right? To make sure that things look a certain way. And we got asked a lot and requested to, what if we did offer that titling solution in a live environment? And that's exactly what you see with Titler Live. It is simply our post-production titling tool as a live solution. Now, that has existed for a while, and it has kind of gone in its own direction in terms of how it is that has been developed in terms of, the types of graphics that we offer, how those graphics are being used in live production, because versus post, you have things like for live sports where you have score bugs, or House of Worship where you have things like lyrics or verses for hymns and all the sorts in those productions. So one thing that we really made sure to bring into this is, one, the flexibility to give live graphics to the professional broadcasting industry in whichever way they needed them fitted. So we offer things like hardware. It is a software application as well that you can install on either Mac or Windows. So you have the opportunity to really scale this or implement this however you want. Along with that, we give users the opportunity to have a variety of different output methods for their graphics. So, and NDI being one of those extremely powerful ones. So we did put a lot of emphasis on being able to bring graphics over NDI. But if you're still working with very traditional signal flows, we still offer that over things like HDMI or SDI, even watch folders or PNG sequences if that's your thing. So one thing I'm going to do actually is I'm going to begin a quick screen share here, and that way we can see exactly the software in action. So pretty much what I have here is Titler Live 5 Present, which is going to be what was offered in that 6-month temporary license given to all of you. When you open the software, what we have here is the playout interface. This playout interface is made of 5 different panels. So we have our preview, our program monitor, a graphics library, a layer list, which is pretty much our control panel, and a layer properties. So here we can see that using the graphics library with the Present Edition, we have access to a variety of pre-curated graphics. So for example, if you want to quickly get started for any kind of production, whether that be a House of Worship or basic newscast, right? Because we do have a wide variety of schools that are in fact using our software to actually, for their broadcasting department, and they want to deploy things like sports graphics. They have newscasts, whether it be at college level, high school level, or even when it comes to some freelancers that have to cover a lot of ground with their projects and have a lot of, client work, and they need a good amount of graphics to cover them. And that's pretty much what we offer here through the graphics library. So if we go into something like the ceramic collection here, we can quickly see that there's a variety of things that we can access. So we have things like data graphs, right? And I can quickly just hover over them, and we'll see them over here previewed in that preview panel. We have things like lower third messages. We have picture-in-picture graphics. So if you're doing something very similar to some kind of webinar, right, you can actually route things like NDI camera feeds or even web camera feeds to those picture-in-picture boxes that are on display here. But let's say we wanted to do something very simple and drag something like a lower third into our playlist. Simply click and drag it, and we'll see that we're actually queuing a render for this graphic. Once we have that graphic fully rendered, we'll see it denoted by this green check mark that it's ready for playback. When we click this graphic, we'll see it play over our program monitor. Note that this project starts with a channel 1. This channel 1 is the broadcast channel that I'll be using, which I'm operating all my graphics from. So we'll see that we have this channel now broadcasting this one graphic layer. Then from this program monitor, we have the option of outputting a specific output method. So here we have things like NDI. I've had an SDI card installed. We would then see that SDI option there, but we'll keep the conversation NDI centric. Now, if I use some kind of switcher application that has NDI or some kind of hardware device that has NDI, we can actually bring that in. So we have we have a PTZ camera here and I have an NDI source here overlaid that is actually my Tether Live feed, but I can make this a little bit larger and see that I in fact brought Tether Live over as an NDI source. So if I want to just very quickly show off how this looks in real time, we can bring that in and we can play these graphics seamlessly over NDI. Note that I am on the same network. So you're seeing there's a variety of things that can happen in terms of latency. I'm in fact using something over Wi-Fi, so that can be a little bit off on that regard, but we do have that functionality coming in over NDI. So we can overlay all these graphics over live video. We can bring them as NDI and we can do a variety of things through Tether Live in that regard. One of the other things that's actually really nice about this software is the ability to not only manage things like graphic playout over NDI, but I can also use this as a hub for different production elements that I wish to use. So let's say, for example, you don't want to be juggling a variety of different applications just to manage simple things like media assets or even live video. I have the ability through Tether Live 5% to import things like media. So by clicking that option to import media, we have access to things like video files, images, and even audio. We can see the variety of media files that we can bring in: MP4s, MPGs, MOVs, AVI, WebM, FLG. All of those will actually be brought in with their alpha channel. We will actually be able to analyze and detect that alpha channel. So if you want to use some kind of exported overlay from Premiere or After Effects, you can bring that in and treat it as a media asset. Luckily for us, I do have some things that automatically does install with the software. So let me just quickly find that through the program files, navigate over to NewBlue, and we'll see that we have some titler content, resources, textures, and we have a variety of videos here that we can use. So let's just quickly bring in this MOV file, and we bring that in as a media layer. Through the layer properties, we'll expose a variety of attributes like looping, custom start and end points, and the fade out, but we will be able to simply just play that in. And if we look over into our switcher, then we're getting a playback for that media clip. Other than that, we do have access to live video sources. So if you want to bring in things like Windows devices or NDI sources, so just like any other PTZ camera or PTZ optics camera that does live as an NDI source over your network, you can map that directly into Tether Live as a layer to then play in and play out like you're seeing the media and the graphic layers. But one thing that's really nice about Tether Live as the graphics, as your CG, is that not only do you have the ability of bringing in things from the graphics library, but we do enable all these graphics to be fully dynamic and in real time. So let's say, for example, we have our top banner here that says Church of Christ, but then we decide to replace this text. So we can say like Ministry of Catholic, or we'll just put ministry for now and hit enter. And we can actually cue a real-time change on that header. Or let's say I change Reverend Robin Sloan over to my actual name here and say Joe Zamora, and we just hit enter, and then we get that field getting replaced. So all this is happening and detecting these changes. All these renders are being isolated, because what's happening here is that there's different elements to this graphic. There's that backing plate, there's an image, there's color, there's 3 different text fields. All of these are things that get exposed through this layer properties panel for live data. So even for this thing like an image here, I can quickly swap in like an Instagram icon and it'll replace it there. These were all custom curated through our design engine, which every single edition of Tether Live 5 offers. So we quickly go into this preview panel and hit edit graphic. This in fact launches a designer window. If you're familiar with things like After Effects or Premiere or Photoshop, and you're familiar with like a timeline layer-based workflow, this is pretty much how all these different design elements exist. And from here's where you'll initialize a variety of different attributes to then become dynamic in real time. So you can see there's things like text fields, image boxes, and shapes. Within these, there's different attributes that can then be enabled as variables. And then they all then become things that we can customize from our layer properties. And I was doing this all while the graphic was live, but we can in fact curate these changes while the graphic is off air. So if I wanted to say just header as a title there for that, we can preview these changes in our preview panel, confirm that they're all accurate, so there's no spelling mistakes and all the content is as needed. And then we can hit the play button to bring that live. There's also what we offer as a cache list. So one thing that is a very typical issue that we run into, or that a lot of people have ran into being in the live production ecosystem, is that we have a bunch of graphics that we need to deploy, and there's that same lower third graphic, but there's a variety of different guests that are going to be collaborating in this event, and I need to have at least 15 different lower thirds for all those guests. You would typically be expected to make a unique export of all those different guest entries. But one thing that Tyler Live allows you to do is actually build records for those graphics. So if we have this header graphic here at the top and we want to build out data for it, we can say something like title card here as my second entry. And I can put a different name here. So we'll put someone like Paul there. And we can say, we can do Zoom events as our line 2, and then we can add a logo here. So we can go ahead and navigate back into this program files, looks at some more other Tyler content to just kind of populate those textures. And we can add this little controller here. So now we've built a second record, and I can double click here to add as many records as I need. So I can do a final third record. We can just say line 3, guest, and we will do something random data there and make a third image. And we can then introduce this angry face there. So now if I play this graphic live, we have 3 different records that reference for those unique updates. So now we see Tyler card with poll and Zoom events, and then we have our line 3 that has guests and random data. And we can see that even the image is dynamically updating from there. So if you're running something like a house of worship production, you can use something like a versus lower third that we actually ship with some of our collections here. And you can build out your cache list and then just have like your reference name and the reference text, and then just quickly access those as a graphics operator. There's a lot of flexibility here that you can then take advantage of. And let's say, for example, you don't want to actually, or maybe you have external data that you want to reference. And it's not something that you want to manually update or build out manually through our cache list. We have what is called our data controllers. So what data controllers pretty much do is they give you access to external data sources. So whether that be local files, some kind of service like social media services, or some kind of statistical service for live sporting events, you can use the data controllers to route that data externally. So if we look into like this general category, for example, we can generate custom clocks. So if you want to create a clock countdown for your event, we can add a new clock. We can customize that clock. We can put the time formatting there. We can say this clock is going to start at 5 or 50 minutes, and we can make it count down to 0, save that clock. And then we can actually configure some stuff, reset that clock, and we can, have this clock go and then count down. We would then be able to like route all this to the actual graphic itself as a component. So if I go into the data here for editing my design, and I go into this text field here, motion and data, I can route something like clock 1 under my variable settings. And that'll pretty much establish a connection between the clock data controller and that actual field of text. So we could be running all those changes in real time. So now that we've rendered all those clock's digits to play back, we can just simply start our clock, and now we have it running down from 50 minutes all the way to 0. So there's a lot of things that we can do that lets us, let us create all those custom things for clocks. And if we want to do spreadsheets, we can bring in spreadsheet data from some kind of spreadsheet file. So if I build out an Excel file here, and I do something like, we do have to initialize data fields. So I can say there's a header data field, or we'll do something simpler. We'll do line 1 and line 2. And we can say Joe, and we'll put Paul's name again, and we can do line 1. I can say NewBlue, right? And we can put Zoom events for the second line. I'll just keep using Zoom events as our name there. We can just save this file, and we can then browse the location to save it to. We can quickly go to the documents and just save it as book 1 and replace whatever I had there. So what we've pretty much done is an emulation of what is visible from the cache list. Is we have 2 different data fields, line 1 and line 2. Every single cell below it is going to be an instance of that data. So line 1 can either represent Joe or Paul. And then what's happening here horizontally is that we have records associated horizontally. So Joe and NewBlue are one whole record, and those associate with line 1 and line 2. And then we have Paul and Zoom events associated as their second record that will then belong to lines 1 and 2. Then using our data controller here, we can either generate a file, which will generate a CSV file off of like the data fields that we see in live data, or we can host any kind of spreadsheet that is over URL. But we can then select that file, connect book 1 to that. We will then see that under our layer properties, we get a brand new tab here. All of our data controllers will appear as tabs here. And we can see that we have the 2 data fields that it detects, but then there's no assignment. But just like we did with our clock data controller, we can just quickly edit this graphic and jump into these fields here and go to motion and data. And then we will see that under this first column, we have our data controller assignment. And under the right column, it automatically detects our data fields. So we can map line 1 there and then select our second text box, then map line 2 on there. Hit that green check mark, and then we'll see those changes render. Now note that I do have to interact with these records so I can get them now sending in real time. And we can now then have that all pre-cached and then updating all those records. And we're seeing that all happen with animations. Now note that everything that we're seeing in regards to motion, when I play things in and I'm seeing those individual elements animating as I'm updating that with real-time data, is they're all happening through animation references. So if you want to curate very deliberate changes with your data and the way everything animates in and out, we do have animation presets and keyframing that all can be assigned to individual layers within your graphic. So here we see that Paul and Zoom events have things like fade-ins and slide-outs, right? So every time we send new data to those text fields, we're getting that all using those animation references as what it's using for those updates. And there is a lot of sophisticated behavior here that can happen between the designer and the playout interface. So if you're ever curious about how to, take advantage of a lot of these features, we do have a lot of educational resources, whether that be tutorial videos, documentation, or I myself actually host webinars on NewBlue's behalf every now and then. Maybe they're on a monthly basis, or between new feature releases, we typically do have webinars. So feel free to check out that content from our website to get a little bit more of an in-depth explanation as how to best take advantage of these different features and functions. Now, to cover a little bit more about some of the other data controllers we offer, is we do have a productivity category, and this is all cloud-based data controllers. So if you want to use something like Google Sheets and access Google Drive spreadsheets and fetch those all over real time, we do give you access to that over the Google service. And we also have that through Microsoft. Note that you're going to see a difference between these 2 data controllers, where we can fetch Sheets files and slides documents from the Google Drive directories. With Microsoft, we can read Excel, but we also do have access to things from your Teams or 365 account. So if you want to use People Finder and find people under your organization or people that you've emailed recently, and you want to extract username or profile data, so like their name, their email, their occupation, all those different elements into a graphic, you can fetch that information. Or Teams chat messages, if you're using the Teams service and you have your entire, your group under that, and you have all their different data and you have different chat rooms, you can extract their profile image, name, and their specific chat message, and then route that all to a graphic real time. Other things that we offer are social media control access. So you can bring in things like Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube comments. These can all be curated in playlists. So if, for example, you want to manage content and you want to be able to look up different users, where you do have to, in fact, log in with credentials, but you can access their different. So let's say you have a keyword and you want to find anybody talking about PTZ optics. For that, for example, you'll find every single recent tweet that was used with that keyword in it, and it'll also pick up hashtags too. So you can have a good amount of control over what type of content you find, and then you can curate a playlist to then, if you have like a media content manager, somebody that is just making sure that the right content is being curated for that event, they'll have access to that playlist. They can say, you can remove this tweet, you can add that tweet, and then you have playback controls to then route all those different posts to one single graphic. Now, other things that we do have are things like sports data controllers. I did see, in fact, that somebody earlier in the Q&A was asking about using NewBlue with a sports broadcast. So we do, in fact, ship with a variety of different scoreboard data tools. Do note, though, that that is something that's available through the sports edition or the broadcast edition, because the present edition that you're seeing that 6-month trial for is going to be the present edition, which is pretty much one of those that you could use for a wide variety of events, but it is not specialized around the sports use. So if you're interested in that, you would have to look into the sports edition. But with that, we have sports graphics and sports data controllers. So you can use things like scoreboard tools, right? If you want to use something like a soccer scoreboard tool, let's say you don't have access to venue data and you want to like broadcast for that, you have a little scoreboard UI to use. Or if you have actual venue data that's being generated by a Daktronics machine, and you have access to data link or any kind of a live XML service like StatCrew, well, not StatCrew actually, but live stats. So we read its StatCrew syntax statistical file. So if you're using anything like Sidearm, live stats, any of those services that support that syntax, we can in fact read it through the StatCrew stats service, which you can then use to use different data templates for different types of sports stats. Then we have scoreboards. So you can route all the scoreboard data to through that data controller, and the ability to also, you won't see it on this one because I don't have it open in the present edition. I have it open in the present edition, but we can only read a limited range of data controllers through those. You also have access to Sportscast. So if you have a sports bot from Sportscast, you can actually connect to their cloud servers and then fetch real-time data that way. So you can bring all that real-time data in through whatever means you see fit. You will see that through the present edition, you have access to things like Google Sheets or Google, Microsoft, and things like spreadsheets, XML, and a variety of different things for real-time data. Since this is all real-time, you can in fact actually route all that and update things in real time. So if I go back and connect this to book one and play that live, right? And I want to go into my Excel file, and let's say, for example, we say, instead of NewBlue, we say presenter, right? And then we overwrite this file. We can actually read that file and make a real-time update. So this is all truly real-time. And we do have around like 5 more minutes left. So I think it would probably be a really good time to have answer a few questions that probably came in during that. Stop that share. So looking at the Q&A, we see that, let's see here. So where can we find more info on the data sources that are accepted in NewBlue? If you go into our products page, you'll see that there's a variety of there's 3 different products that we offer and our hardware solution. There's going to be an area on the page for each of those different products that will actually show a breakdown of the data controllers that we have on offer. So you'll see that if you're looking into the sports edition, it'll show you the different data controllers there. And if you're curious about how to use those data controllers, you can look into our resources and how you would then set up that data controller and then find that. And there's some clarification on that for sports data. So you will see the different services available on the website. If you look into Title Live Sport or Title Live Broadcast, you will see the different data controls that we offer there. And then through the same documentation, you'll actually see what we offer. I did in fact record a webinar that's sports centric. So if you're curious about something like using a Daktronics board through something like Sportscast, I actually go into that setup in depth. But if you're ever curious about how to set that up with like something like StatCrew, or maybe you have a particular service and you want to reach out to me directly, you will see my email for my profile. I'm on a profile for this Zoom event, and you can email me directly with all the questions regarding that.
I do. Hey, Joe, thank you so much. That was such a great presentation.
There are a couple more questions coming in from YouTube. I was wondering if you could address really quick.
Sure.
Okay, Chad is asking, is NewBlue limited to 16 layers?
So with the present edition, we have a 15 layer limit, in fact. Okay. So what that layer limit is those layers that we were seeing in the layers list as I was operating and adding graphics. That 15 layers is all you can add to the present edition. But let's say, for example, you want to have access to more than 15 layers, pretty much an unlimited amount of layers, or more than one channel of output. So let's say you want to generate 3 NDI feeds of graphics through NewBlue, then you'd be able to unlock that ability through the Title Life 5 Broadcast Edition.
Nice. And one more before I pass you over to Paul from Robbie. Are you able to populate your scoreboard info from XML?
Yes. So we do have a way of connecting directly to XML files. We'll be able to parse that data. It is worth being a bit mindful with the syntax. If you're ever curious about some of the syntax for some of those XML files, feel free to reach out to either me or support department, and we can tell you or assist you with that syntax. If not, we do have, let's say, for example, you're using scoreboard data from a service like StatCrew or StatCrew format, StatCrew syntax stats over Sidearm or like Live Stats, we will automatically be able to read that, and that'll all be parsed nicely. So if you're using one of those services that in fact use StatCrew syntax, you're pretty much good to go pretty much in a plug and play fashion.
Sweet. That's awesome. What a great presentation. We're using NewBlueFX Present during our presentation. So when you see some of those cool graphics come up, that's where we're coming from. We're using NDI to connect multiple computers together. And it's about time for my presentation. I can't believe it. Boom, look at that beautiful graphic.